So you will need pen and paper for this lesson. And remember, any questions that you've got, you can just write it in the chat and I will respond on here. Miss Smith has got in touch and said that the English is actually at 11:20, not 10:20. Okay, so it's not you're not in the wrong place. Okay, so you need pen and paper. Today's title is LO1. Know how sport is covered in the media. You can write today's date. And the learning objective is to understand how sport is covered on TV, in the written press, on the radio and on the internet. Okay, whilst you wait, so once you've done all that, whilst you wait, you can write down ways we can find out information about sport, or we could watch sport. So I've given you an example. We can watch cricket on TV. All right, write them down in the chat. So write your answers down in the chat. What other ways could we find out information about a particular sport? Yep, good. Advertisements. And how would the advertisements be? In newspapers. Good. Okay, yeah, so we can find out results. Yeah, we can listen to it on the radio. That's brilliant. So on BBC Radio 1, if you're listening to that, then they might show you when they say the news, they might give you scores or the latest sports news there. Brilliant. Any more? What sport would you say dominates? Yeah, Google's a good one as well. So we could Google, if we wanted to join a club, we could Google about a sport. Or if we wanted to find out information about the sport, like when teams are playing, we could use Google. What sport would you say dominates the coverage for in the media? Yes, football. Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of information that you can find out about football, isn't there? But then you've got minority sports who will suffer with that. So things like volleyball or table tennis, snooker, they don't get a lot of coverage. So you'll see that if you look at the back of the newspaper, chances are it's a football story. Okay. So I am going to move on. Has everyone written the title? You will need to, girls, you'll need to write down notes for this lesson. All right. Because there is going to be a quiz at the end. So let's look at where we are currently at. So yesterday we did the exam. So that's the unit RO51. We've done that now, okay? We can move on. If we need to resit it, if we don't feel that we did very well, if the results come back in March, April, whenever they come back, I'm not sure when they will come back due to everything that's going on. If we don't get the grade that we were hoping for, hopefully we will get a chance to resit it, all right? But with everything that's going on, I don't know what the situation is there. Okay, so sorry, I can't give you any more detail. That leaves us with 3 more units left. We've got RO52, which is the practical side of the course. We've got RO53, which is sports leadership, and that's a mixture of kind of practical and coursework. And then we've got RO54, sport and the media, okay, which is all coursework. And you will submit your coursework, I will grade it, and then we'll send it off to OCR and say, you have achieved this grade because this is the work that you've produced. We are focusing on RO54, sport and the media. And the reason why we're doing that is because obviously with everything that's going on, we normally would move on to the practical side of the course, but we can't because we're not in school. And at the moment, as it stands, we're not allowed to play sport, okay, due to the coronavirus. So we are moving on to RO54 just because you can do the coursework at home. Now, with the coursework, if you miss a lesson, you're going to be catching up, okay? And it's going to be a lot of work. We don't have a lot of time to revisit things. So try and keep on top of it as best you can. Okay. What do you play in the practical? So in the practical side of it, going back to the RO52, with that you will have a team sport and you'll have an individual sport. So for instance, if I was doing it, I might have netball as my team sport, which I am assessed in, and then I would have badminton as my individual sport that I would be assessed in. But there is a list of sports which the exam board accepts. That might mean that we can't do it in school. For instance, if Grace wanted to do skiing, I think that is on the list for your individual sport. But because obviously we don't have the facilities at school, that would require an outside club writing your witness statements, which is like a statement to say why you've achieved the grade in the practical. Okay, but we're moving on to RO54, so don't worry about RO52 yet. So in RO54, there are 5 learning outcomes. Now, for each of these learning outcomes, we need to produce a piece of coursework. So once we've finished this unit, we should have 5 pieces of coursework. We're focusing on learning outcome 1, which is knowing how the sport is covered across the media. And how I'm going to do this, girls, is each lesson, I'm going to just introduce a new kind of media outlet that will cover sport. And your job is to then type it up. Right, so it's going to be broken down for you. And it will help you structure your coursework a little bit better. All right, so moving on. By the end of the topic, you should understand how sport is covered by the following types of media. So we need to know how it's covered in the on the television. We need to know how it's covered by the written press. We need to know how it's covered in the radio, and we need to know how it's covered by the internet. Okay, and for each of these, there's little subheadings that we need to write paragraphs or create PowerPoint slides for. All right. What we're going to do today, though, is we're just going to go through an overview of all of these. All right, so we're not going to be producing the coursework today. We're just going to be introducing you to the topic. So the 4 different types of media that we need to be aware of. Television. So they're television programs which are shown on TV, and they could be free of charge, or it might be that you pay for a package. For example, Sky Sports. If you wanted to watch Sky Sports, you would have to pay a subscription fee. You don't get it free. With having said that, programs that are free, and I'm saying free in brackets, you still have to pay a TV license for, and then you can watch it, but you're not paying that subscription fee. All right. Then we've got the radio. So that is sound that is played through the radio. That could be either a national broadcast, or which goes all over the country, or it could be a local radio, which is broadcasted to certain areas. I think round here it might be BBC Radio Lancashire. Why do you need a TV license? So going back to that, you need a TV license because you have to pay BBC, for instance. We pay for them to develop, to make programs. So the money goes to the BBC. Okay. Then we've got the written press. So the written press will be anything kind of words that report on specific events. It might be just brief information where it's like, these are the results in the newspaper, or it might be that it covers a story. So maybe there's like a scandal that's happened in sport, and that will be written down, so in written form. And then we've got finally the internet. So that might be news, photos, videos, and music distributed over the internet. All right, so they're the 4 that we need to know. So for TV, and this is where I want you to start writing down, girls. The first one here. Does anyone know what we call these TV channels? Does anyone know? BBC, BBC 2, ITV, Channel 4, Channel 5. Okay, I'm going to let you know. These are terrestrial TV channels. Okay, so these are the channels that you will just pay the TV license for, but everybody is available to watch. If you've got a TV and a TV license, then you can watch these channels. Okay, so you need to get these down. Does anyone know what this type of TV is? What these channels are, where you pay a subscription? Okay, these are satellite TV channels. So Sky, BT, Virgin Media, you can pay a subscription fee a month. For instance, I have Sky and I think I pay about £25 a month to get Sky. But on top of that, I've got to pay an extra £20 a month to then get Sky Sports. Okay, so I pay that monthly. That's what satellite TV. If you don't pay the subscription, you don't get the channels. Okay, and then the final one, Sky Sports Box Office and Sky Sports, BT Sport Box Office. These are examples of pay-per-view. So it sounds like you're saying paper, which automatically makes you think written press, but it's spelt differently. So you pay per view. So you get to watch one event. So for instance, if Anthony Joshua is fighting, it's more than likely going to be on a Sky Sports Box Office or BT Sport Box Office. You will pay £20 just to watch that one event. Okay, once the event's over, that's it. Okay, so you need to get those three down, and they're examples of TV. Give me a thumbs up if you've got that down. Brill. Remember, girls, if you're not sure, this will be recorded so you can watch it back. So moving on. Brill, thank you, girls, for letting me know. Moving on is the written press. So I'm going to do, again, I'm going to show you the pictures. Can you guess what the example of the written press is? What do we think that is? Anyone want to have a go? Yeah, good. News. What's the second word that I'm looking for? News. What? Newspaper. Good. Yes. So newspapers. There's two types of newspapers. So you have tabloid newspaper. Brilliant. Tabloid newspaper, and you have broadsheet. So tabloid newspaper examples like The Sun or Daily Star. They are quite a lot smaller, and they will, how you will see them in the newsagents or wherever you buy the newspaper, they'll have like big font and a lot of pictures but not a lot of writing. And again, sport is found at the back of the newspaper. And then broadsheet, it's not the same anymore, but back in the 80s it used to be that the newspapers were huge. So a broadsheet newspaper were very big. You'd see people on the tube in London and they would be carrying this huge newspaper that is like half the size of them. And with that, the difference between the two is that broadsheet newspapers like The Guardian or The Times, they are a lot more writing in it, little less, not as many pictures as a tabloid newspaper, and they have quite a lot of more detail. Okay, so that's one example of how sport is shown in the written press by newspapers. Next example, can anyone think? What is that an example of? Yes, Caitlin, well done. So it's magazines. Yeah, brilliant. So with magazines, they are usually, a sport will have its own magazine. So for example, the one that you can see on the PowerPoint, boxing, it'll just have information about boxing in it. So another example that's not on here, you could have 442 for football. You could have for another boxing one is a magazine called The Ring. And that will either be released weekly or monthly. All right. And what it does, it just gives you information about that sport. So if a particular fighter here, I'm guessing Tyson Fury's had a fight, they might write an article about it, about how he performed in a fight. Or if he's got an up and coming fight, they'll write who he's playing against, who he's fighting against, and they will cover that in the magazines. All right. Next one, can we guess what I know it's quite small, that one, but can you tell me what that's an example of in the written press? Books, brilliant. Yes, well done. So you have different types of books. You've got autobiographies by sports people. You've got coaching manuals. You've got, I said coaching manuals, information history about sport. So authors might write books on history of sport. And there's some of the examples of books that you can buy where it will talk about sport. Okay, and then finally for this one's a hard one. Can anyone guess what that is? The one of the words is actually on the picture. I've just spotted it. Yes, May, well done. It's a fanzine. Okay, so it's a fanzine. So what a fanzine is a club. So for instance, here, Leicester City, they will have their own programme that they release. So Leicester City Football Club here have a fanzine called The Fox. And what that does, in there, they will have all the information about Leicester City. So it might be games that they've played at that month. It might be the fixtures that they are playing in next few weeks or the next few months. It might be any news about players that they've brought in, and it's created by the fans. All right, so it's not officially from Leicester City, it's by the fans. That's why it's called a fanzine. Okay. These were quite popular before the internet had developed. Now we have something called webzines, which would go under the internet. But fanzines are examples of programs that fans make about a particular club. Okay, and they have that in different sports. All right. So radio now. We're moving on to has everyone got those down? Written them down. Just have to put written press, newspaper, magazine, fanzine, and books. Brill. Thank you, Caitlin. So going to move on to the next one, which is radio. The BBC Radio 1. Can anyone tell me what type of radio station that is? So that is an example of a national radio station. So you've got BBC Radio 1, that is broadcasted to everybody in the country. So if you were in Manchester and Lancaster, you would get the same radio. Okay. Then we've got this one. Can anyone have a guess at what that one is? So we've got national radio there. Yes, well done, Caitlin. That's an example of local radio. So specific areas of the country will be able to receive that local radio station. So for instance, us here will get Radio Lancashire, but if we were in London, we would get radio stations like BBC Radio London. Okay, so it's different. It will be different for different areas of the country. Okay. The third example of radio. This is an example of a sports radio. So BBC Radio 5 Live Sports Extra will just have sports information on it all the time. Okay, so they will only report sports stuff. They will have fans ringing in from all over the country, talking about events, sports events that might be going on, or scandal that's happening in sports, or really hot topics that are happening in sport, and they can ring in and they can discuss it. They might have experts on as well, so they might have ex-sports players who come in and talk about their sport, and that's a way that the radio shows sport. Okay, and then the final example is Talk Sport, which is internet radio. So that is the radio that is available on the internet. So you go onto your computer, you type in Talk Sport, you can listen to it. All right, and with that, you will again, it'll be similar to 5 Live Sports Extra. They'll talk about sports stuff, so you'll have ex-professionals on talking about teams' performances, and that's another example of. It can also be an example of sports radio, that one, but I'm just using it for a picture of the internet radio. Okay, so those 4 examples of radio. Have you written those down? So radio, you should have national radio, local radio, and internet radio. Hi, Grace. Oh, you've just logged on. Okay, yeah, we've been through quite a bit of it. So we're just going through ways that the media can show sport, and we're on radio. It might be worth you watching the video back. Okay. Okay, and then the final one is internet. So how is sport shown on the internet? First one, they have blogs. So this is an example of The Guardian, and blogs are kind of live chats, really. So whilst for example, here, there's a tennis match going on the internet, there will be somebody writing what is happening. So almost like commentating, okay? Other things, people can comment on it as well in blogs, but usually it's just an author or a commentator who is writing on the internet what is happening during a sporting event, like they've got here, okay? This one, can anyone think about what this is an example of? Do you mean how so fast in terms of how they're commentating so fast, Grace? So it's not, they'll write big paragraphs, so it won't just be like hit the ball, returned it. There'll be more detail, and it won't be as often. So it might be like 5 minutes, and then they'll write another paragraph. So it's not as quick as you think. Yes, May, that is an example of websites. So each sport should have their own website. So that's an example of Manchester City. On there, you'll be able to find out fixture information, the teams, so who's playing in the team. You're able to shop merchandise. You'll be able to get a ticket if you want to go to a game, and any other information about a specific team. So that's websites. Anyone guess what that is? Yep, it's a podcast. Well done. So a podcast is just like an audio of rather than watching a TV program, you can listen to an audio a podcast, on your headphones. And there are specific sports ones. So this is an example of Peter Crouch, who used to be an England footballer, retired now, but he has his own podcast, and he'll talk about everything about football. So he might talk about games that have happened at the weekend. He might talk about players that have been bought by clubs. He might talk about any rule changes that have happened in football. So, for instance, this year they introduced VAR, video analysis referee, or video assistant referee, I think it stands for, and quite a lot of controversy about that. So they'll discuss it on these sort of podcasts. Okay. Then we've got the World Cup and P2P streaming. This is an example of peer-to-peer sharing. So usually it's not, so it's like illegal. Yeah, it's like a stream. So it's, if you want to kind of watch a boxing match, you might use this without having to pay the price of the pay-per-view TV that we went through on the first slide. Peer-to-peer, I think quite a lot of it is a bit dodgy, all right, but you can watch sport on peer-to-peer sharing. Okay, can anyone give me an example of what this is? Hopefully you'll get this. Social media, excellent. Yeah, so players, clubs, they will have their own social media account, whether that be on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I think some will have it on Snapchat as well. And they'll either show recaps of videos. So I follow Manchester United on Instagram, and what they have is they'll have either picture if somebody's won an award. So one of their players won Player of the Month last month, and they had a picture of him. And I found that out because I follow them on Instagram. They also have, I do support Manchester United, yes, Caitlin. I then was able to watch old matches. So, for instance, they had like a short video up of a goal that was scored that made them win the FA Cup. No, Liverpool aren't better. But clubs can promote themselves using these social media platforms. Okay. This one is an example of fan sites. So this again is created by fans, and they'll have all the information on. So this is created by a fan, and so this is an example of rugby, Planet Rugby. And if you are a rugby fan, you'll be able to sign on here and find out all the information. Okay. Right. What I would like you to, so have we got them down? So what I would like you to do for the rest of the lesson is I would like you to complete the exit quiz on Microsoft Forms. Now, if you're watching this live, then the link I'm going to put in the chat in a minute. So you just click on the link and you complete the form. If you're watching it on a recorded lesson, then the link is going to be on ClassChart. All right, so that won't apply to any of you that are currently watching. You will need to log in using your school email address and your password. Okay, so let me just copy that link into and what that does, hopefully you get this. Hopefully you will get, if you click on it, it should take you to this Microsoft form sheet, and you are completing that. Once you've finished, once you've answered all the questions, you submit it at the bottom and it will give you a grade. So obviously I didn't put any in there, and it's asking me I've got to click an answer. All right, it's required. Okay, so that's what you're going to do for the rest of the lesson. Answer the questions, all right, and then I will get your score. Once you've done that, that's it. Okay, Grace, if you need to, you can rewatch this video if you're not sure on what is happening. Okay.